welcome back to Ron Hasn't Seen. This is a channel where I discuss movies I've seen for the first time that I probably should have seen a long time ago. Today, we're not talking about one movie, but three. We are talking about the Before Trilogy. The Before Trilogy is a series of three films directed by Richard Linklater and starring Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. Hawke and Delpy played Jesse and Celine across 18 years of their relationship. The first film, Before Sunrise, was written by Linklater and Kim Curzon, with the sequels written by Linklater, Hawke, and Delpy. Before Sunrise came out in 1995, where we first meet Jesse and Celine. They're students. They're traveling on a train across Europe, coming from Budapest. Jesse is getting off in Vienna to catch his flight back to the U.S., while Celine is traveling back home to Paris. Jesse asks Celine to spend the night with him exploring the city before his flight the next morning. They do spend the evening wandering around the city, seeing the sights. They're discussing their life and their outlooks and this kind of general Gen X feel to it. We're given the open implication that they had sex in the park overnight, but it's not clearly stated. At the end, when they're about to depart, they agree to meet back at the train station 6 months later, and we're left with the question of whether they did. Before Sunset picks up in Paris in 2004. Jesse is now a successful author on a book tour for his novel that's basically the first movie. Celine comes to see him at one of his bookshop presentations in Paris, so we learn that Jesse showed up at the station on that day, but Celine, even though she wanted to, could not because it was the day of her grandmother's funeral. So they catch up wandering around Paris. We find out Jesse is married with a kid, though he admits the marriage is more for just convenience and only exists because of his son. They clear up that, yes, they did have sex in the park that night, which is kind of just a joke in the movie, I think, to reference back to the first one. But this time, we're left with the implication that they had several near misses while they were both living in New York over the years. Jesse does have to catch a flight back that evening again, so their time is really short, and the movie ends in Celine's apartment with the question of whether Jesse actually leaves to make his flight or not. Then in 2013, we get Before Midnight. Jesse and Celine have now been together since the last film and do have two twin daughters. They're staying with friends in Greece for the summer, and the movie opens with them dropping off Jesse's son Hank to go back to visit his mother during the year. Though they haven't been married, they seem to have had a good relationship for the past decade, but this day is compounded with Jesse's guilt about being absent from Hank's life because of his strained relationship with the boy's mother, and Celine is now looking at a new job, and they're trying to reconcile what they're going to do in the future. So this ignites an argument over everything that's kind of been boiling up over the last 9 years, and Celine eventually storms out of their hotel room with the implication that she's leaving him and it's over. Of course, Jesse follows. He tries to make it up to her by playing one of his little charismatic games we've seen him do over the course of the films. Things seem to work out a little better, and we're left with the open-ended question about their relationship one more time, but I think this one gives us more of a solid implication that they'll probably be okay, that they're mature enough to settle these things. Linklater based the original story off an afternoon he spent with a woman in Philadelphia after meeting her at a toy store. He brought in Curzon, who had worked with him on Dazed and Confused and Slacker, to help write the dialogue so he can get a woman's perspective in. Delpy has also said that she and Hawke added a lot of their characters' dialogue to the first movie to make it a little bit more romantic, but though how much is disputed. While the initial script for Before Sunrise was written in only 11 days, casting took over 9 months. I believe Delpy was cast first and then Hawke came in later. Linklater wanted to do a sequel with a larger budget than the film's first $2.5 million, like filming over multiple locations, but he never secured funding. But he and Delpy and Hawke all worked on their own versions of where they thought the characters would go. The second film was made for about $2 million over 11 days in Paris. And even more so than the first film, takes place really in real time. Like, it really is just an afternoon. Like, maybe you cut out an hour of time out of this, so hour and a half movie might have taken place over 3 hours at most. And the third, again, championed by Linklater, Hawke, and Delpy. It was made for $3 million over 15 days in Greece. So that's kind of the background. And, the spread out timeline, kind of something Linklater's played with other times in Boyhood, which I haven't seen. Probably should, but the concept of it felt a little pretentious, kind of similar to this, but now that I really like these, maybe I will go give that a shot. But I've said several times on this channel, I'm not a guy who likes romance movies. But as much as this is a love story, there's something more here. I ended up watching all these here in my early 40s, but I think that helped make them more relatable to me. There is that Gen angst and humor and cynical nature I grew up with in the first film, and it gets tempered by them as the movies go on. I related to those youthful relationships, and then again being ready to settle down in my early 30s, and now in my 40s, life evolving with kids and things changing as time goes on. It just felt so real and relatable to me. My wife, who was a couple years younger than me, loved the films too, but I think that Gen X zeitgeist of the first movie kind of escaped her. That 4 years of time really made a difference between her high school and my high school and college experiences were just a little different with the Gen X feel versus the millennial feel. There's other actors, but really 99% of this boils down to Hawke and Delpy, and they're just simply marvelous through all three films. And the passion that they had for the story and the characters that drove them off camera to continue the story is really evident on screen. The chemistry was so natural. The dialogue is the focus of the film, and it's framed by these amazing cityscapes and landscapes of Greece, but there's no big set pieces to draw attention. It feels like a guilt-free voyeuristic look into these people's lives. Their ease together just lends them to making jokes that give just enough comedy to keep it from becoming this kind of bland, sappy mess. Even in Before Sunset, where we know Jesse is married, the dialogue and the acting make it clear that the marriage is just kind of a convenience sham. There's no relationship there, and Hank is the only reason they're still in a relationship, and he makes it clear that that's pretty much his wife's point of view as far as he knows too. So that relieves some of that guilty unease of rooting for Jesse and Celine. But it makes it feel different from that joyful whimsy and wonder and youthful nature of the first film. Well, the third is good about giving us that honest perspective from both points of view on what a relationship becomes after a decade, and how much you have to put into making it work at that point. And having this collaborative writing really kept it from becoming a POV from either Jesse or Celine's perspective. It really is about the two of them together, and you get both of their points of view well shared. And the film is also gorgeous to look at, highlighting the beauty of Vienna, Paris, Greece, without making it feel like a crutch to give the story a gravitas. It's just there in the background. Though they discuss the scenes and stuff like that, it just makes it feel natural. The places don't feel like a character per se, but they do add that personality to what could easily have developed into like an over two-shot formula, like a sitcom discussion. I do have to ask myself if knowing that there were sequels took something away from the first two films' impact with those open-ended endings, and I don't think it took too much away. I didn't know what really happened in the two future ones at the time, and I did space out watching them at least a couple days between them on purpose to discuss, and my wife and I actually did discuss who, if either, ended up at the train station. Did Jesse go back to New York? I left just enough time to answer those questions, so maybe if you're going to watch these, don't watch them back to back per se, just give yourself a little time to digest and think. But that's how I like movies. I like to sit and think about them. But maybe just knowing that we had answers to these open-ended questions dampened the impact of the first couple films. But I don't know, like, I really thought there was going to be some sort of come together again in Before Midnight. I didn't realize that they were the relationship. I thought somehow it was. And my wife kept referencing same time next year. I think it's an Alan Alda film where this couple keeps having an affair at the same point every year on this vacation, but it keeps their actual marriage is fresh. And I thought that's kind of where the third film was going. I didn't know how, if anybody showed up in that first film, or if they had just been doing this long distance relationship that fizzled and something picked up again. Like, even knowing what happened, or even knowing there were sequels, didn't tell me what happened. I really love these films. I think they're a fantastic, as one of my friends put it, like lucky circumstance that they happen this way. And Linklater does really these great true to life pieces. I mean, Dazed and Confused really captured that feel of high school and change and all that. Even though, it was 2 decades set from where I was in high school, it just still felt that way. And this film really, really grabbed that 20s and 30s and 40s feel in relationships. So yes, I really do recommend these. Obviously, this was full of spoilers, but you're watching a review channel. That's what's going to happen. But yeah, it's not the destination on these. It really is the journey, and it's a great journey. So, highly recommend these films. Next week, I'm going back to the 80s again with John Carpenter's Escape from New York. So thank you guys for watching Ron Hasn't Seen. If you like what I'm doing, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next week.